Hey, Restorers, welcome to a brand new series called The Main Street Restorer. I am excited to be doing this in partnership with Restoration Brokers of America, or RBA. Gokul Padmanabhan, who is the broker there and owns and runs the company and has been in the industry for quite some time. He is kind of the partner in this video series. This is not the first time Gokul and I have partnered up on a series, so hopefully you have seen our masterclass on M&A that we did, gosh, in 2022 now, I think it was. And
Time's flying when you're having fun.
time's flying when you're having fun. And so, Gokul is always out looking to educate and help the industry and coach restorers in a healthy direction for their company, helping them determine what they want to do next. And we wanted to do a series that talks to the Main Street Restorer. We're talking about companies that are $6 million and under in revenue, and talking about what it looks like to have good financial performance, and how to decide your exit strategy, whatever that may be. What is your exit strategy, and what does your financial performance need to look like? How do you build a team? What is your growth potential? Customer and revenue concentration, developing sales and marketing, and how to have a stellar reputation. Those are all, and net promoter scores. Those are all the topics that we're going to cover through this series. We're hoping to keep these conversations kind of short and sweet for you, so that you can listen to them and move on with your day, and hopefully take some action items right into your company after you listen to the episode, and figure out what your journey is from here, and how to accomplish some of your goals as a Main Street Restorer, if that's the realm that you fall in and you're listening to this. So Gokul, welcome. Thank you very much for doing another video series with me. So I'm going to have you
Thanks for having
introduce
me.
yourself, and then also give a little bit about the definition of how you view a Main Street Restorer, what that means to you.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction. That introduction reminded me of like an intro into a boxing match. That was amazing. So thank you for that. So yeah, so listen, we talked about it before. So when you go to a lot of conferences, it just came out of the RIA conference, and there's more conferences coming up. There's a lot of news on mergers and acquisitions in our industry, right? I mean, I was in it longer than I care to admit when it was boring. Okay. And now there's a lot of excitement going on, and it has been, and it's all good, right? And we talk about mergers, we talk about acquisitions, but depending on who you ask, there's 20 to 25,000 restoration companies in our industry when you add it all up together, depending on who you ask. And most of those companies are what I call Main Street restoration companies, right? They're operated by one entrepreneur. They got one or two offices. Maybe they don't fall into the, I got 30 million, 50 million in revenue category. And I want to do a series. I know we talked a lot about it. And, it just feels like maybe there's some great opportunity for us to educate, those owners. And I'm a small business owner myself. So I think there's great opportunities to educate and help and collaborate with the Main Street owners. So I'm
Yes.
glad to be doing this.
Yes. Okay. So
I
we're
love it, because I'm actually talking to founders, and these businesses mean so much to the founders, like it does to me, and like your business means to you, and beyond the numbers, this is it's one of the funner parts of what I do. So I'm excited.
I agree with that. And from my perspective with CNR, I have a lot of these Main Street restorers talking to me saying, there's so much going on in the industry, and they kind of feel like they're alone on an island sometimes, of like,
Right.
what do I do? How do I keep my business moving forward in a realm of, the economy is interesting. There's lots of M&A going on. There's a lot of consolidation, a lot of PE activity. There's so much going on in the industry. And I think these Main Street restorers sometimes feel like, oh my gosh, am I left alone? Like, what am I supposed to do now? How do I stay my course in all of this? So, all right, so this first episode, we want to talk a little bit about kind of financial performance and determining, if you're going to maybe exit, what's the best exit strategy, even if you're not doing it now. This could be 20, 30 years from now, whatever that may be, but everybody should have an exit strategy. You and I have talked about that many times over as well. So let's kind of start at the top if we're talking about financial performance, and share what you would say are the key financial indicators for a restoration company. What are some of the main metrics that owners need to be paying attention to as a Main Street restorer?
Yeah, great question, right? So the whole series that we're doing is based on it's data coming from our firm. And it's talking about what the top 5% of companies, the Main Street restoration companies, are doing. And the ones that have gotten great offers, the one that when they want to exit can exit, correct? And we'll get to financial performance, but I'll tell you why this is so important and why this kind of yearly planning is important. Most of the time, when people exit their companies, it is not a planned event. It is an unplanned event. Okay, host of reasons, which are dark, and I don't want to go into it.
Yeah.
Let's keep this happy. It's
Yeah.
Tuesday. Okay, it's almost Friday and margarita time. But let's keep this positive. So most of the time, almost 9 out of 10 folks, when they call us and says, you know what, I need to exit my company because fill in the blank. It wasn't a planned event. Okay, so it pays you as an owner to keep your company healthy.
Yeah.
If and when you want to exit, you can. And if not, that's okay too. You know, you got a really great asset in your hands that at some point you're going to exit and you can help your family and get you into retirement and get into, you know, whatever the next chapter is. So that's the main reason. Most of the exits are not planned. Okay. It's an event driven exercise,
Yeah.
most of it. And the hardest thing, I've been doing it for 17, 18 years, you know, and I can tell you, and my staff will tell you that the hardest calls I make till today, or when I call an owner and say, hey, your company, you know, we need some work to do before you can exit your company. And they don't have the resources to do it. They don't have the health. They don't have the time, the energy. They want to get into retirement. Till today, it is the hardest call for me to make. So anyway, I can keep going, but let's talk about financial performance here.
No, that's okay. Talk about, well, okay, but let's keep setting the stage really quick because you are huge on data. So a lot of the stuff that you're bringing into this series is based on data that you have because you do a lot of research. So talk about kind of the data and your process behind the messaging that you're bringing into the series.
Yeah. Listen, I mean, anyone can talk a big game and it's all hot air in my business, you know, but we're looking at 17, 18 years of data and we're looking at comps. We're looking at what sold, how did it sell, how quickly did it sell, how many offers did it get, how close to the asking price did we get, what were the terms of the contract. A lot of people think asking price is the end all, and it's not. It's the beginning of the negotiating, right? I mean, asking price is one. How that asking price is cut up and how much of that check you're going to get at closing, that's where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah.
Right. So we looked at all of these data. I don't know, maybe 500 plus transactions, you know, over 15 some years. And so that's where we compiled all of this. So it's pretty rock solid.
Yes. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the first question of key financial indicators. What are key financial indicators for the Main Street Restorer?
Yeah, so I'm going off on tangents already. It's only been like what, 4 minutes.
Okay.
So okay, we'll get back to financial. So here's what the top 5% people are doing. Okay, they're keeping their books in both accrual and financial and cash basis. Okay, it's not one or the other. All right, they're keeping it both. They're not using their business as a personal ATM machine.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're
Yep.
not doing it. And here's a really interesting thing: the ones that have really good books are outsourcing it. Listen, you cannot be good at everything.
100%.
Okay, there's a sense of invincibility among us entrepreneurs, and that's why we all started our companies against odds. And a lot of you guys started from your garage and grown, you know, to 5,000-6,000 square foot warehouse. That personality trait is fantastic. It kind of gets us going and running through hills and running on top of mountains. But as you start to get into the middle of your career, towards the end of your career, you have to learn to figure out what you're good at. And then you need to get a team. And without a shadow of a doubt, the books that we see that are well kept are always outsourced to a bookkeeper. Okay. And a lot of people go, well, it's expensive. And, you know, it's not. Think of it, don't think of it as an expense. Think of it as an investment that's going to give you 3, 4, 5 times its return. Because I'll tell you what happens. Let's put ourselves from a buyer's perspective, right? They're looking at hundreds of companies. Most of those companies are hot air, bunch of promises. And once they look at the books, it's nothing. So if you are the 1 in 100, people are going to pay for it. And that is the trick to it, right? So keeping your books in both cash and accrual. Don't run your business like it's a personal ATM. Get a bookkeeper. Even from outside is better than inside because they're going to give you perspectives. on your business. I'll give you an example. My bookkeeper, Kevin, a real person, has been my bookkeeper for 15 years. Every Friday at 10 o'clock, I meet with him and I go over my books. And not only do I go over my books with him, but I also review budget versus actuals.
Hmm.
So what did I budget for certain things every single year? What are my actuals? That's how an external bookkeeper can help you. They keep you honest, and it's the best thing you can do for your business, right? So let's look at financial trends and KPIs and things of that sort, right? So most companies, when they get a really good asking price, the top 5%, is very counterintuitive. You sell when things are really, really good. Okay. You don't wait for things to get bad, because when things get bad, you're just unloading your headache to somebody else and you cannot do it.
Yeah.
It's a very counterintuitive move,
Yep.
right? So usually these companies have either steady or increasing revenue, steady to increasing profit, gross margins, and the books are clean. Like I said, the owner's not having 30, 40 different personal expenses that are going through the business. Now, if you want to run some expenses through the business, that's fine. Just increase your salary instead, and that'll be much easier to prove.
Sure.
So these are simple things to do, but because they're so simple to do, most people don't do them.
Yeah.
I think sometimes, like, if these are more complicated, like, people will get focused and do it. But these are just real simple things. You can do it very quickly.
So how much does like profit margin matter when you're being looked at by a buyer? Does that matter a lot, or does that matter not so much compared to XYZ?
So I'll tell you what matters. A lot of people think profit matters, of course, because people are
Sure.
buying profit, right? So you got to be a profitable company.
Yep.
Right. So from a buyer's perspective, when they look at profit, they're saying, hey, I'm going to pay you whatever, $3 million. Let's just use this as an example, right? And in return, I hope this business is going to make $600,000 or $700,000 for the next 10 years. And out of that 700,000, I've got a loan to pay, whatever. Let's assume that's 300,000, and I'm going to keep 400 to feed my family and do the things and live and do the things that I want to do. It's very simple thinking from a buyer's point of view for a Main Street business. And we have to answer that, right? And if we can answer that, then profits are great. So margins as a percentages don't really matter as much. People are just paying for every dollar of profit that you can show,
Okay.
right, in the business. But what matters more are trends. So for example, let's say your net profit margin was 15% in 2021, 15% in 2022, 30% in 2023. You're going to get asked a lot of questions.
Yep.
Okay. So trends matter more than the actual number.
Okay.
So that's what a buyer's looking at. They're looking at a business, they want a steady business. So they're looking at the revenues to be steady. They're looking at trends. Is it steady or is it increasing? They're looking at profit and margins. Are they steady or are they increasing or decreasing? They just don't want, buyers tend to shy away from businesses that have gyrating effects and trends, right? They want things that are more steady. The more steady it is, the more a buyer is going to pay for it, because it de-risks their deal for them big time.
Yes. Okay.
So it
Okay.
makes sense.
So
That's what all the good ones are doing. They're steady.
they're steady.
Steady
Even
Eddie,
when
yes.
things feel tough and there's not weather, they differentiate their streams enough that they can keep the revenue going. That makes very, very good sense.
Correct.
Okay, so what if the big players aren't interested? Or what if what happens if a company feels like, well, we want to sell, but nobody wants to buy us?
Yeah, I think that's a sentiment like a lot of us are feeling in our industry right now. I think, the big whales is what we call it, they're getting a lot of oxygen in the room. A lot of people are talking about them, and rightfully so. It's exciting for our industry, right? So, like I said before, out of the 23,000 restoration companies that we have, there's most of them are Main Street companies, right? So what happens? What happens if one of the big roll up, corporate guys that are rolling up, national players that are rolling up, or national private equity companies that are rolling up? What if they don't want your business? Right?
Yep.
So we'll address it. Let's address the FOMO part of it. The first time I heard it, I thought it was a 4-letter word, but it is an acronym. But So fear of missing out. There's no need to fear to miss out. Okay, I can tell you back in 2008 and 2009 when we were in the Great Recession, and some of your young kids that are listening, you may not remember this, but you know,
Yeah.
the older folks and the wiser folks may probably remember this.
Uh-huh.
You know what? We still sold Main Street companies, restoration companies that had good revenues and good incomes and good profits back in 2008, 2009. So there's this artificial thing that we're going to miss out. So the first thing I want to tell y'all is don't worry about it. There's no fear of missing out on anything. Your job is if you have a healthy company, it's going to sell and there's a buyer at any market.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. I like it.
Correct? The
Yeah.
second thing you think about is yes, there's national players out there that are rolling up that are looking for maybe a bigger size company because they just don't have the infrastructure for smaller offices nationwide. You're looking at private equity with it the same. So you got to really understand who the buyers are, right? And different kinds of buyers have different wants and different needs. And you really want to go through that, right? How are they structured? Why are they purchasing your business? How will they run it post closing? How do they value your company, right? So there's a lot of things that buyers are considering that we should know about and you should know about if you're deciding to take your business to market, right? So buyers normally fall under like 5 different categories, at least at our firm. I kind of divide them into individual buyers. So there's a lot of individual buyers, high net worth individuals that have
Yep.
sold another business, a HVAC business or whatever, a contracting business, and they want to get into restoration. They make great buyers for Main Street companies. They got business experience. They want to do good for your employees and your partners and your vendors. They want to pay you a fair price. They make great buyers, right? Then you got the strategic buyers. So these are buyers that, maybe they get an office in a neighboring city and they kind of want to move geographically, start to expand. Okay. Good buyers, but maybe my number 2 on the list. I think individual buyers are probably my number 1 buyer for Main Street companies. Then you got the financial buyers. These are people that are buying things, the private equity guys. They really don't play a lot on the Main Street business, so they may not be the right buyer for you. There's a lot of horror stories where they look at smaller Main Street businesses and they go to the top of the 9th inning and then they're left at the altar, because they're simply not the right fit. They're not the right kind of buyer for you. You want a buyer that actually wants your business, that like they really want it. You don't want a buyer that can look at your business and say, I can take it or leave it. Let me throw you an offer.
Yeah.
That's not what you want, right? So you got the financial buyers, and then you got the family offices. They kind of look more like private equity. They look at the bigger companies. And another kind of buyer that a lot of people don't talk about is employees.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if you got a really good GM or you got a team of 2 or 3 employees, the banks that finance Main Street companies love employees to buy the company. And there's structures and strategies that we can use to sell to employees. And that could be right under your nose. And not only are you going to get full value for your money, but you're going to do good to the team that actually brought you there. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you got 5 kinds of buyers. So it's really important for Main Street companies to say, okay, if it's not the PE firms and the financial people or the national roll-ups, that's okay. There's other kind of buyers that will absolutely love to buy your company. And that's really what you want to find out. And you want to strategize that. You want to have some clarity about that before you go to market, right?
Okay.
It's kind of like knowing your audience. You really got to know who you're speaking to.
So once you figure out which is the right buyer, then how do you determine the right buyer within there? Like, and we talked about it off asking questions, who, what, when, where, why, all of these questions.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there?
So, the right buyer really depends a lot on the culture of the company too. It really depends on the owner that's running it, correct? Some owners will say, hey, give me a check, I'm out of here. And that's fine. So maybe a financial buyer will be okay for that person. But most owners who are running their business today, their business means a lot to them beyond just numbers and money, and even though it's important and financial stuff. So you need to find a buyer that's got the right fit. You need to find a buyer that's got the right personality. So a lot of it depends on the buyer. So what we do is we will talk to the buyer a lot. And usually the conversation always starts with what is the valuation? But I'm telling you, as you go through this journey, it quickly turns to who would be the right buyer, because these owners care about how the employees are treated and how their customers are treated after they're gone. And that's really, really important.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So before we wrap it up, how many companies that actually want to sell end up going through with the full sale by the end of it?
Less than 10%. Okay, so when you go to conferences, you'll hear a lot about, I've got a lot of offers on the table. I've got LOIs is a term, it's called letter of intent that goes around. And that's all great, but they're not the numbers that we look at. We look at, how many actually get to the end zone and how many actually close. So that's why you'll see a lot of the videos I do with you and the videos we have on our YouTube channel and everywhere else. It's all about educating and it's all about preparation. And it can make a huge difference for your family when it's time to exit.
Perfect. Okay. We laid the foundation, financial performance and finding the right buyer for the Main Street Restorer or your exit strategy, whatever that may be. So next up is building a team. We're going to move on to that episode. So stay tuned for the next episode. Gokul, anything you want to add on financial performance before we wrap this one up?
No, here's the message on our first video for the, addressing the Main Street operator here. There are plenty of options. There's no need of fear of missing out. If you run a healthy business, there is a really great buyer out in the marketplace that'll pay you a fair price for you and your family to exit for what you've created. No need to rush it. And that's my message for this video. Counterintuitive. It's not what you think it is, but that's my message for it.
Wise words. We're going to pull that one out into its own soundbite. Thank you, Gokul. See you on the next video.
All right. Thanks, everyone.